Be more than human.
Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is J.R. Carroll. I am the author of the More Than Human novels, and today we are going to finally review Robin Hobb, and specifically Assassin's Apprentice. Now, this has been a book that for months, maybe over a year, people have been telling me, you gotta get to Hobb, you gotta get to Hobb. Anytime I would do contrast certain authors with other authors, or like, oh, what author does this the best and does that the best, it was just, hey, Robin Hobb, have you tried Robin Hobb? Farseer, all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, I gotta get to her. And I've been making more of an effort to get to what I call like legendary books or legendary authors. And so, I kind of started my journey. Dune, with Frank Herbert, and then, Dan Simmons, and then Ursula K. Le Guin. And Ursula, Le Guin, she was one that I was most worried about because her book is, all, early 70s, maybe it might have even been the 60s, late 60s. And I was always told, oh, she has very archaic prose. She pushed that. If you're going to be in a fantasy world, you got to use archaic prose.
But I don't want your life.
And so I was really worried. And when I read, her first book there, I was really surprised that it wasn't really that archaic. And it was, and her, and this is going to be a contrast here. Le Guin's book, her first book there, was very generic, but it was all done very well and very fascinating and kept me engaged the whole time for a very short book. And that could also be a factor, is very short book, right? So I came into Hobb super excited. I mean, I'm pumped. She's one of the legendary, she's, some would say she's on the Mount Rushmore anyway of fantasy, but definitely the Mount Rushmore of, female fantasy writers.
Hell yes.
So I was super pumped, and I got into the book, and within, I don't even know, maybe 30 minutes, I closed the book of Assassin's Apprentice, right? I closed it, said, I was like, I can't right now. And maybe it was because I just came off The Witcher. Maybe there's some similarities there. I was like, no, let's go to do something different. Let's, palate cleanser. So I read Stephen King's Pet Sematary, which I have a review out, and it is amazing. So after I read that, I was like, okay, we got some horror, some modern day horror stuff. Let's get back in. So I got back in, and kind of still had the same vibes. Like I like her prose. I wasn't like really loving them. It didn't feel like they flowed so easily. Her prose, I would argue, more archaic prose than Le Guin. And Fitz is somewhat interesting, somewhat annoying though. And it had the same thing. The Le Guin's first novel had very generic. I felt, one thing I will give Hobb is I felt more visually stimulated than I was from Le Guin, but it felt like I was watching a very generic fantasy movie or TV show. Now, it could be because I've read a lot more fantasy, a lot newer fantasy before we got here, but yeah, there was just something about it that just wasn't so engaging. And for at least the first half of the book, I pretty much, like, as she's describing stuff, I'm like, this is gonna happen. Like there. I don't want to do really any spoilers, but there's a part where some guy comes through a secret door, right? And he's done this a couple times, and the kid is just, Fitz is sitting there, and he's thinking to himself and talking to himself, and I'm like, he's coming through that secret door right now, coming through that door, and he did, and I just did that through the whole thing. Now sometimes there are books that are great that do that. Recently, I read a sci-fi book by John Ringo, and I knew exactly where the whole story was going, but the way he put it together, the most interesting part of the book was, how are you going to do that? How are you going to get him there? How are you going to get him there? How are you going to beat them? Here, it was just, I wasn't surprised by anything. Nothing new was brought to me. I almost had the same feeling that I had from the Crystal Shard series, where I just wasn't impressed by Salvatore either in that first book. It all felt super generic and called everything, and some things didn't make sense. I will say Hobb makes more sense. Like, I don't think she got tied up in any ends and stuff. And I know I've heard, like, they just get better, but also they just get bigger. And if I'm not like, tell me, like, from how I'm feeling about this book, does the next book get so much better that it makes up for it being a bigger book that I'm actually gonna, enjoy? Because I don't know, man. Like, I feel so bad. I feel bad because everybody seems to love Hobb, and I just don't know where the disconnect happened. Like, what really, is there something she can do to pull me back in? I really hope so. Like, I hate starting, like, I don't know if this is trilogy or multiple trilogies, but, like, I hate not finishing stuff. But I don't know, guys. Let me know. Should I continue? Is there hope for me? I'm sorry I didn't like it, but hey, like, subscribe, follow the channel. Maybe you can push me to try one of her other series, or maybe you can push me to continue this one. But remember, be more than human.